some of those values could change. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's part of our progression of growth, that our values change. In other words, if I am a sophomore in high school, which I'm not, but a sophomore in high school, what they value is going to be very different than what you value, right? I would hope so, right? That same sophomore, when they get into their first year of college, their values are going to change. That same first year of college, when they graduate and maybe meet the love of their lives and get married and have children, man, there's a huge change in what they value. You with me? Am I beating a dead horse? Come on, y'all. Smile. I just want to make sure you're with me and you understand. Okay. And then, now we're going to talk about these things, so there's going to be a lot more to this than right now. And then vision. We talked some about vision last time. But vision is the thing that, here's the best way to understand vision. I mentioned it this morning. I have a vision that's been instilled by the Word of God that I hope and I pray and I believe and I see myself standing in front of Jesus, hearing, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That vision will cause me to say yes to some things and no to other things. And this is how we're going to talk about values the same way. Our values support our vision. Our values are the things that say yes and no to life. If I value family and my wife and my children, then chances are, if I'm true to those values, when one of my old friends calls me up and says, "Hey man, you're going to want to go spend the weekend, we're going to go fishing and paintballing and la la la." Well, I haven't seen my family all week. No, it sounds great, but my value lies here. This is where, and the thing causes me to say yes to that and no to something else. Okay, does that make sense? We're going to define this and break this down more and the importance of this. So, values and vision are two pieces of a puzzle that we all have, but we may not be aware that we're operating based on values and vision. Whether you can articulate it and write it down, every one of us has some type of values. Something that causes us to say yes and no. So here's an example. Some years ago, I'm coaching one of the pastors, and in that process of coaching, we developed something we're going to talk about called core values. We're like one stage away from talking about core values. Core values are those most intrinsic things, those 5 or 6 things that direct what we do throughout life at any given moment. So he had said to me in this conversation that one of his core values was financial freedom. It was very important to him that he didn't live a life in debt. Sounded good to me, right? That could be a core value, because that causes you to decide, do I buy things on credit or do I hold off until I can pay for it? And so on. Do I buy a $50,000 car or do I buy a $30,000 car? Okay, or do I buy a $18,000 car? What I value drives that, no pun intended, right? So he had told me real early financial freedom was an important value. Months go by in the coaching process, and one afternoon in a coaching call, I asked him, like I always do, "Hey, what would you like to talk about today? What's important to you right now?" And he said, "I've got some issues with debt that I need to talk about." Well, it may not have caught him, but it catches me, because everyone that I coach, I keep a record of our conversations, and especially core values, because I'm constantly, when I'm talking to someone, I'm wondering in the process, how are their decisions aligning with their core values? And if they're not, and they're talking about anxiety and being unhappy and things going on in their life, chances are it's because there's a misalignment in their core values with their actions. What they're doing isn't supported by their core values. Does that make sense? And he was anxious and he was upset because he had acquired a whole bunch of debt. And I said to him, "Could you tell me how the position that you're in right now aligns with your core values. And he was like, I don't know. I haven't looked at them in a long time. Let me see if I can find them. And he goes through his computer and he finds what he had sent me. And it got real quiet real quick. Because I guess he saw in there that he had listed a core value of financial freedom. And I proposed to him that maybe, as we're going to see, there's a type of value that we call aspirational. In some ways I'm a little ahead of myself, but it's something that I want and I would like to have, but I don't currently have, or I don't currently have enough of it. So I'm doing things to try and get more of that value operational in my life, if that makes sense. And I proposed to him when he got it, I proposed to him, could we maybe think about what might be a different core value? And he came up with instant gratification. Wow, how introspective of him, and honest and transparent. Because he had said, I realize now that part of my problem is when I am feeling anxious or upset, I feel better by spending money. Wow, does anyone ever understand that? Come on, that's like a common thing in our world, in our society. Let's don't feel good, let's go to the mall. Let's go walk the mall and see if we can spark some joy, right? So to speak. Okay? So understanding values and the vision is that place that I want to be. And if you remember, if you were here last time, that's okay. If you're not, we can have multiple visions existing within our life. I don't mean we're seeing multiple things. I mean, I could have a vision for my family. My wife and I could have a vision that we're renting, and we have a vision what it would look like to own a home for us. Okay? I could have a vision to get through college, to go back to college, to complete a degree that I never did complete. I could have a vision for my children, for how I'd like to see them grow and prosper. I could have a vision for my ministry, for how I serve Jesus. Okay? So we have the possibility of multiple vision type things in our life. But our values are our values. Now here's the thing, as we're getting ready to move in the different types of values, you should not have values that exist in your professional life and values that exist in your home life. It's very interesting when I go through with pastors and we do a value exercise where they're trying to figure out what their values are. I just did this yesterday with a new young pastor in the Florida conference, and he had emailed me his values, the work that he had done on values, and he went through and did a beautiful job explaining why these different things were what he valued and everything, and it was really good. And at the end I said, now explain to me how these values work outside of your professional life, meaning ministry. Tell me about how these values come into play in your relationship with your wife and with your friends and in life. And guess what? Everything that he had done was his professional life. And his personal, who he was, he hadn't. So I said, look, here's the reality. That's half of who you are. Yeah, your values part. Your ministry. But what about the you? Just you as a person. What do you value? Right? Okay. So let's talk about clarifying our values. And now we're going to talk about some different types or descriptions of values. Core values are exactly, now this is all explained in your book too, with a little more detail. I'm just going to talk about it from a different perspective. Core values are exactly what they sound like. They are the most intrinsic, deepest part of what drives us to say yes and no to the world that we live in. Okay? Everything from I value my family, my relationship. I value my health. We could go on. And there's lots of ways that you can approach how you develop core values. If you do a search on the internet and just type in core value exercise, you'll get all different ways that you can figure it out. But most typically, you're going to be presented with a whole bunch of words that describe lots of things, from integrity to relationships to communication to just on and on and on. Usually you'll see like 50 words, and they're going to say, circle 12 words that mean something to you, that for whatever reason they just resonate with you. And then we're going to take those words and we're going to kind of put them in little groupings together. If you were to sit right now and I said, let's take 5 minutes, we're not going to do this, but I want you to think about this for later. Let's take 5 minutes and I want you to write down several words that describe what's important to you right now. If you thought about, here's the things that really matter to me. But not only do they matter, I'm living consistent with those words. Because like I said, you could write, financial freedom matters to me, but I owe $50,000 in credit card debt. That's not a core value. All right? What things are happening for you? So are we kind of getting a picture of what this might be, right? Aspirational values. I've already mentioned that. So aspirational values, they are those things that we want, but we recognize we may not have enough of it in our lives. If one of you could come over here, we have the workbook. I'll give you a couple of those. There you go. You're welcome. So, aspirational values. It could be lots of things. Believe it or not, an aspirational value could be, I value my health, and as such, I want to be able to run a marathon. I want my physical health to be as such that if I wanted to run 26 miles, I could do it. Could you do that today if you haven't run before? So I could say I value my health and I have a vision to be able to run a marathon, and I'm going to start taking steps to be able to move towards that. So what I value is my health, and how am I going to get there? All right? Aspirational value, I want it, I see it, I may have a little, but I may not have enough. That could be something like, I have an aspirational value that I want to spend more time with my family because I realize that my job, my work is keeping me from my family. I can't call that a core value because if it was a core value, I would change my job. Do you understand the difference? It's an aspirational value. I recognize it, it's important, and I'm going to probably start taking steps to change that aspirational value to a core so that it can be core. You with me? Okay, shake your heads just a little bit. So life-giving values can be core values as well, and typically they do connect, but a life-giving value could be something like family. Right? Family brings life. Okay? A life-giving value could be, I want to get up every morning and I want to spend an hour with Jesus. And that's something that I highly value, is very important to me, and I will say yes and no to the world around so that I can live that value. That certainly would be considered a life-giving value. If there's life-giving values, it's not up here, but then there's an antithesis, there's an opposite to that, which are non-life-giving values. Because I can value something that isn't good for me. So understand that all core values aren't positive. We have to assess what are our core values. That particular pastor came to the conclusion that he had a core value that was instant gratification, because when I'm not happy, I spend money so that I can be happy. And being happy was more important. Instant gratification was more important than saving money, being financially free. Is that type of value a positive one? No. But people have negative values in their life, right? There's people that value being able to go out on Friday and Saturday night and party. They work all week long to save money so that they can go buy their drugs, their booze, whatever it is, go hang out in bars because Why else are we working? I know people that are like that. Why else would I work if I can't go out and party on the weekends? But that's a value. Okay? Make sense? No, but it's a value nonetheless. No, it definitely isn't a life-giving value. These are the ones that we want to think about. But we have to understand that if we're being honest, it's very possible that we could have things that we value that aren't good for us. And that we're doing it. And we're making choices. And we're saying yes and no to things in life based on a value that's not a good one. All right? Ultimate values, those become the things that I would put standing in front of Jesus, and the things that drive me to be able to do that as an ultimate value. Ultimate values also come out of core, but they are the highest level of things that have the absolute most importance. Have you ever seen or heard about when they do it's typically a demonstration that's used when they're trying to help people understand about doing priorities. And I wish I had the demonstration because it's so powerful. And that's, you're standing at a table and you have a big jar and you have rocks. You ever seen that? Rocks? And then you have, golf ball, but rocks, pebbles, sand, and water. Okay? And in front of the group, this is very typically done in classrooms or in college to help people understand. You say, okay, I'm going to take all the big rocks and I'm going to put them in the jar. And they're all the way to the top. Now, they don't see the sand and the pebbles. That's under the desk. They just see. And is that full? And everybody says yes. It's full. And then you take the pebbles and you pour the pebbles and you shake the jar and you all of a sudden you have all these pebbles and these big rocks. Is that jar full? And everyone goes, yeah, of course it is. Then you take the sand and you pour the sand and you shake now you got big rocks, pebbles, and sand. Is the jar full? Yeah, it looks full. You take the pitcher of water and you pour the water in there, and now you have this jar with big rocks, pebbles, sand, and water. And the whole point of that is the big rocks, if you don't put them in first, you'll never get them in. Because the pebbles, sand, and water will fill your life. The big rocks are the things that matter the most to you. And I can't tell you how many times I have conversations with pastors and just people that I'm coaching, trying to help them understand what are the big rocks in their life that really matter. And our core values always connect to the big rocks. The things that we will, in that exercise, say, give me 6 big rocks. The 6 most important things to you, guaranteed those 6 things in one way or another relate to core values. Some of them are going to be life-giving, and for sure some of them are going to be ultimate values. Or they wouldn't be the big rocks. They're the things that you think are the most important things in your life. And what ends up happening is that people can put those big rocks in and then all of a sudden realize, where's my family? Or where's me? I forgot to put me in there. Do I matter to myself? I'm so concerned with everything else and everyone else, I didn't put me in the jar. And if I don't put me in there, how am I going to take care of myself? How am I going to have a flourishing life if I'm not in there? So that has to be part of it, ultimate values. Ultimate values is that I might flourish, that I might have a productive life. And because of that, or how about my youngest son a few years back, he asked a really blatant, Dad, why do you do what you do? He knows that I was in the business world. He knows that when I was there, I made way, way, way more money than you ever make as a pastor. Because you don't get into ministry, pastoral ministry, because you think you're going to make a lot of money, unless you have some independent thing separate and you're going to try and sell rags to people as whatever. Think about that one for just a bit. And I told him that when it's all said and done, I want to have mattered in this world. That my life affected people in a way that mattered, that made them better, that helped them in turn to make other people better, right? And one of the greatest joys I've had happened in just the last few weeks. I was up at the Lake Union conference office. I'm part of a team that's doing something in the NAD called Level 5 Leadership, where they selected about 20 young pastors from all over North American Division, and they're training them as future leaders. And I'm part of that training team, and I'm teaching them the whole coaching side of how to coach and how to use it and all of that. And I met a young pastor who, he said, "Do you by any chance know Pastor Glenn Aguirre?" Not that any of you may know him, but he was pastor of Miami Springs up to a few years ago. But I was his mentor and I was his coach as he came up for many years. It turned out that Glenn was the mentor coach to this young pastor as he came out of school and then went through Andrews and all of that. And now here he is. And now I'm going to be coaching him as he's in this Level 5 coaching thing, right? It also turns out that another man that he knew, I mentored to be a lay pastor some years ago, was one of his mentors. And this happened with two different young men in the last couple weeks. And just, if you can understand when you can say, I have spiritual grandchildren, that I poured myself into someone who poured themselves into someone who now it's like full circle, and I'm training him to be able, these two young pastors, to be able to do this to another generation and generation. That's ultimate values and living a life that matters. Okay? All right, let's roll. Let's talk about vision. Essence of vision. Let's put these up and then we're going to talk about them. So essence of vision, function of vision, Jesus and vision. Let's talk about essence of vision. Essence of vision is the thing that drives us to do things that we normally wouldn't do. And if you remember the last time, I shouldn't say that because there's a bunch of you that weren't here last time, I tell the story of Joshua and Caleb because Joshua is one of my favorite characters in the Bible when it comes to vision being played out. See, Joshua as a young man, he comes out of Egypt, right? And he goes into the wilderness wanderings for 40 years. He's one of the 12 spies that gets to go into the promised land and see that the land is everything that God promised it would be. But if you remember, Joshua and Caleb are the only two of 12 that come with a good report. The other 12 say all the bad things. Right? The people were like giants. We were like grasshoppers. Yeah, maybe there's milk and honey flowing, but there's no way we could do it. Forget it. God's sending us to die. On and on and on. And ultimately the people hear the 10, and because of it, God sentences that whole generation that came out of Egypt to die in the wilderness. And the only ones that make it are the people that are born during the 40 years, other than Joshua and Caleb. Because even Moses never makes it into the promised land. Just Joshua and Caleb. But then we jump from that story to the beginning of Joshua's story as a leader. And Joshua is now 80 years old. He's taken over for Moses, which, by the way, must have been quite the thing. Right? Moses has died, and now it's like, what? Are you kidding? Now the buck stops here? No. And God's constantly saying, be of good cheer, be of good courage. I'm with you. Don't worry, Joshua. I got your back. But then there's Joshua, 80 years old, with a sword in his hand, standing in front of the people, yelling, we can take the land. Let's go. He's leading the charge at 80 years old. And I have to believe that the only reason Joshua was able to do that was because of the vision that God had given him of the promised land 40 years before that. It was that vision that carried him through watching everyone that he knew and loved die in the wilderness, yet remain faithful to God. There's a scripture, without vision, people perish. But we could say without hope, people perish. Because hope and vision are very closely connected. I hope for something. I have a vision for something. Hope seems to be more emotional. Vision seems to be more practical as we describe things. But as we're going to find out, the problem is that most people may, somewhere in their knower, understand vision, but it never gets from here to here, and it never becomes real. I won't ask you to raise your hands or anything, but if I was to ask, how many of you have a vision or have vision for your life beyond this moment, that you see something more for yourself, that because of that vision you're being driven and you're working towards something else? That's what vision is. And the essence, the function of vision is that it is that thing that causes us to get up in the morning. If your vision is weak, your desire to get up in the morning is pretty weak. If the only vision you have is for, like I said, some people, they're working for the weekend, like an old song used to say, right? That's all they're doing. They're working hard so they can party on the weekend. That's the vision. They don't see beyond it. They have no money past it. As long as I can pay for my party on Friday and Saturday, I don't care, because on Monday I'm back to work earning money for Friday and Saturday. That's pretty weak vision. But it's vision nonetheless. It's, I'm working so that I can do something. But now we're called to be way different than that. First of all, we can say we have a vision of standing in front of Jesus. Could we say that? If you don't, it's something you need to pray for. God, help me to imagine and to see in my mind and in my heart what it could look like when I stand in front of you, what it might feel like when I stand in front of you. Right? You know the song, I Can Only Imagine? Right? That's really an attempt to capture what that could all be like, that experience. Let's talk about Jesus and vision. How often is Jesus talking about vision? Can we think of any times that Jesus is presenting vision? Can I tell you that it's everywhere? Can I tell you that every time Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like, Jesus is painting vision? He's painting a picture of what is just out there. Right? Jesus is all about vision. Not having visions. Because as soon as we say vision, well, are you having visions? Right? We're not talking about prophecy, having dreams and visions. That's something totally different. Okay? We're talking about that thing. In the last time we met, we called it compelling vision. Because if it's not compelling, it doesn't matter. Do you think Joshua seeing the promised land, seeing a place where there's fruit, and this flowing with milk and honey isn't literal. It means that this land is so productive and abundant, right? There was fruit trees and probably olive trees and apple trees and oranges and streams of water and all of this. They went in there and he looked at it and he was like, you gotta be kidding me. We've lived in Egypt, right? Where the only thing that grew was like when it was close enough to the Nile, as soon as you got a little bit away from it, it just turned into sand. And we've been marching through the sand. Vision. Now here's the vision killer. My friends, we live in a fallen world. Without a doubt. Not only do we live in a fallen world, but we have a cold-hearted enemy. Now, understand that, now take this in how I'm saying it. Satan does not care about those outside of Jesus' family. Now, understand, he's already got them. All he just has to do is keep pouring on what they do, and he doesn't have to worry about them. They're just going to keep pursuing the world, and it's when somebody turns to Jesus and starts to walk away from the place where he can control us, right, that we have a cold-hearted enemy who's going to do anything he can to destroy us. And the higher up the food chain you are, the higher up the ladder you are in the Christian world, meaning the longer you've been doing this, the more you've been mentoring people, the more you're visible, the more he's going to come after you. If you're head of a household, he's going to come after you. Because if he can take you out, he'll take out your family. And if he can't take you, he's going to go after whoever's weakest in the family. Make no mistake, this is what he does. If it's not your husband or your wife, then he's going to come after your children. And that's the reality. So how does he get us? Well, I'm going to start with the things that makes no sense. That he gets us because we're so overextended in our lives that we can't really function in a healthy way. And sometimes it's so typical within pastoral ministry. The pastors spend so much time serving everyone else that they forget their family. Their marriages fall apart, and their children's are labeled PKs. And you know what PK usually, it's not just pastor's kid. When they say PK, it's, oh, he's a PK, or she's a PK. It's because they behave appallingly. And everyone expects something different of them. But they don't behave that way. And they don't behave in the way that people think. And it's because pastor is so busy trying to tend the sheep that he forgot about the flock that God gave him right there in his own home. And elders do it, and people in ministry do it, and people use it as an excuse. I'm gone 3 nights or 4 nights a week because I got men's ministry, I'm on the board, I'm an elder, I got da-da-da-da. And it's like every night I've got a reason why I'm not home, but I'm serving God. And I'm telling you that I think Jesus is saying, hey, stop serving me so much and start dealing with what's really important. Because if you can't take care of your family and those that I've put right in front of you, how can you expect to take care of those that are out there in the perimeter? We're vulnerable to overextension. We can't even understand vision when we're so busy trying to manage all that stuff. And typically, people are really good firefighters because they don't understand. And now when I say firefighters, that means they run around with a pistol trying to put out the little fires that are popping up in their life all day long. Right? I lived in Colorado in the mountains for 16 years. And you know, that's one thing about living in the mountains is the fear of fire. Okay, and I've seen some fires that were 2 hills away that were so big you couldn't believe how big they were and how scary it is, thinking, man, it's only God that's going to stop this, because if it keeps coming, our house is gone. Right? So what can you do? You can be proactive. You can cut trees away so you have a fire line at least away from your house. You can make sure that every year you go around and you clean up all the dead brush on your property. We had 10 acres of property. Now we could be proactive to try and prevent the fire, or if it came, I could try and stand out there with a hose and try and keep my house from burning down. What makes more sense? Be proactive, right? Right? Most people are so caught up in this that they don't understand what it means to be proactive in life. To plan and not just react. Poor prioritizing and reactive posture. That's what I've been talking about. We don't prioritize. We don't plan. When I did premarital counseling for years and years, one of the things that every young couple that I counseled was we set vision and goals for 1, 5, and 10 years. The first year, the first 5 years, the first 10 years of their marriage. And that was all about having priorities and not being in a reactive mode. Now, can you plan for everything? You know, anyone that's older than 15 years old knows that life happens. And you can have plans, right? The best laid plans of mice and men. But at least plan. And then if things change, okay, let's react to that. But we struggle with vision because we don't take these steps, and because this is the place where the enemy gets us. If he can keep us living this way, overextended, which means we don't prioritize, we don't plan, we don't think about what really matters, and live a life that drives to that, and then we're constantly just situationally reacting. Life happens, and we try and figure out what to do. Wouldn't you like to have, to see a fire 2 hills away and know that, you know what, it's 2 hills away, but at least I have taken down every tree within 40 feet of my house, and I have gone out 100 yards, and there's no old dry brush laying on the ground, and I've done the best I can do, and the rest is in God's hands. Right? Okay, so let's pop these up. Vision, picture of some desired outcome, whatever that is. Right? You could have a vision for building a shed in your backyard. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a vision. I have a vision that next year I'm digging my own swimming pool. I don't know. Hey, when I was a kid, me and a couple friends of ours got some shovels, and by the time his parents came out, we dug about a 9-foot hole by 8 foot wide, and this is down in South Dade, and guess what? Water was filling it up. We hit the water table, and this thing was filling up with water. We made our own swimming pool, right? At 9 years old, 10 years old. Vision statement that describes what the picture looks like. See, here's one of the keys about vision. You can't just hold it in your head. You got to write it down. Even Scripture says that. Write the vision down, that though it may tarry, those people can run with it. Because vision doesn't always happen as soon as you conceive it in your mind. Which is very true, like for a church. The church. So let me jump off this for a second and explain something that's kind of important. All right? Do we understand the difference between mission and vision? Or have you ever thought about mission and vision? Most churches, I wish Pastor was here, most churches have a mission statement and a vision statement. Okay? My thought is you shouldn't have a mission statement. Because in the Bible, Jesus gave the mission statement. What's the mission? Make disciples, right? Baptizing them in the name of the Father and Son and Holy Spirit, teaching them everything that I taught you. That's the mission statement that Jesus gave. I don't care what denomination you are, if you call yourself a born-again Christian following Jesus, that's the mission that He gave to us all. Now the vision is how the Holy Spirit speaks to a given group on how they can uniquely fulfill the mission. Based on who they are, where they are, what does the populace look like around you. It's unique for every group. Because guess what? There's no other group of people like you. Which means there's no other church like this one anywhere in the world. Should you feel excited about that? Or should you be depressed? You should be excited because you have unique in this church. In Fort Myers Seventh-day Adventist Church, you have unique gifts and talents that exist nowhere else. The question is, can we look at the mission and then say, here's our unique vision to fulfill the mission? So we write down a vision statement that says, here's how we as a unique body, here's how we as a unique family, husband and wife, here's how I as a unique individual will fulfill this mission. This vision that I have. Whatever it is. Again, remember, you can have multiple vision. You can have a vision that you want to be an artist. You want to be able to oil paint. And someday I would like to be able to sell my paintings. Okay? Well, guess what? Write it down and start doing it. Because you'll never get there if you don't start. And we could say, well, it's all up to God. And God's going to say, yeah, I guess it is. But if you don't start, I can't do anything about it. Can I tell you a little joke? Is that okay? Right? So this guy is like desperate in financial straits. And he goes to church and he kneels down and he says, God, I don't know what I'm going to do, but if you could help me win the lottery, it would take care of everything. I could pay all my bills and God, I would tithe back a huge percent, right? And he prays and prays and prays, and then he goes home and the lottery comes and goes and he doesn't win. And he's disappointed, and he comes back the next week and he does the same thing, gets down on his knees and he prays and he prays and prays. And this goes on for a few weeks, and now he's totally discouraged. And finally, there he is in church, all by himself, down on his knees, crying out to God. God, why won't you help me? I prayed, please help me. And the clouds part and he hears a voice from heaven. Hey, listen, John, at least go buy a ticket. So the point of that is we got to buy the ticket. We can pray for anything. I can pray to run a marathon, but God's not going to go blink and I'm going to go run 26.3 miles. Could he? Yeah. Does he? Nah, not too often. What do you want in your life that, like that lottery ticket, you got to buy the ticket and you got to get going, right? That's what writing the vision is, right? So then we ask the question, what is it? How does it feel when and if you ever grow up? Now this can be kind of harsh when we're talking to older adults, but the bottom line is so many people are living lives that they've never had vision or goals. They're just making it through from day to day, and what they did when they were 20 is what they're doing when they're 50. No different. No change. And then they're wondering why they never got anywhere. Aim at nothing, hit nothing. Right? Hello? Did it just get really quiet here for a reason? Right? And then finally, the destination and where you are. This I talked about last time when we talked about or we talked about current reality and compelling vision. Okay? Current reality is exactly where you are today. Who you are, what you are, your maturity, everything that makes you, you, and your life is your current reality right now. We have vision because we want to be somewhere different. We have a vision to be something different, to be somewhere different, to have something different, to develop a skill different than where we are. But like everything, this destination and where you are is... I neglected to say this about core values, and I did say this last time, is that who uses a GPS when they drive? Pretty much everybody, right? If you drive, pretty much we use a phone, right? Unless you have CarPlay or something and then whatever. But we use GPS. I got here from my house in Orlando using a GPS, right? To watch the road, to get down here. When you turn on a GPS, what's the first thing that happens? What does a GPS do? First thing. Yeah, find your location. I am here. Because guess what? For it to say you're going to get there, you have to know where here is. It's from here that it calculates how you're going to get there. And vision, this idea of the destination and where you are, you have to be honest and real about where you are. What are my core values? Who am I right now? If I want to be something different or I want to go to this place, I've got to be honest about it. I have to turn on my GPS, my core value, and say, Alex is right here. Because only then can I really take the journey to get to there, whatever there is, whatever there looks like. All right? Okay. So this is getting a little bit more esoteric, so to speak, but something that when we're talking about vision, we need to think about, okay? So have you ever thought, and maybe it's just me that does this, but, why me, God? Not why did you choose me, but why was I born in Miami, Florida in 1957? Okay? Which, by the way, I think was pretty fortuitous, right? To be born in a great place, because Miami at that time was a great place to live. All right? I've lived a life that I've seen such amazing things in changes in technology and culture, and it's just been amazing. God, why wasn't I born in Vietnam in the middle of the war? Or in sub-Saharan Africa? Or wherever? I don't know. Because there's a whole world and time that I could have been born anywhere else. But God, why? Why did you bless me so much, right? And then this idea in the midst of that, now these are just things that I think at least some point in our life we need to think about that, because it puts life into perspective, right? Why do we exist? That's like the thing that throughout humanity, throughout human history, why do we exist? You know, asking the question, there's got to be more to life than you take a breath and then one day it's your last. There's got to be more. And I'm not going to sit here and like philosophize. You know, this is something I just am pointing it out to, like, it's a healthy exercise to think about this. Why are you here now? Not just here, but where you live. Because I believe that where you live is the mission field that God has picked for you. The people, the circle of people that you know, the place that you work, the places that you visit on any of the grocery store that you go to. This is your unique mission field. What is it you are trying to accomplish or become, if anything? And I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter how old you are. Because if you ever stop trying to be, you might as well stop living. If all you're doing is just getting up and taking a breath, then what's the point? Let me get real cold and candid here. Last year I watched my mother die because she gave up on life. My stepdad died a year before, and we all watched it, and there was nothing we could do. We just watched her wither away, and she died of this undiagnosed thing that I to this day believe it was broken heart, and she just said there was no reason to live anymore. And she willed herself to end. Because that's what we do. If we have no vision, no purpose, no reason. I wish I could think of it, but there's a great book about a pilot who was captured during the Vietnam War and spent like 8 years in what they called the Hanoi Hilton, the prisons in Vietnam, in a cage in the ground for like 8 years before he was freed. And they asked him, because so many other pilots and soldiers died and didn't make it. And he said, every morning I woke up and I played 18 holes of golf. He loved golf, and he'd grown up in Southern California and had played golf as a young man. And he got up every morning and ate his little handful of rice, and then in his mind, he played golf. And he looked forward to playing golf every day. And he said it was just that I had purpose to do that every day that gave him a reason to live. Now, I can't understand why playing golf would give anyone a reason to live, personally, but that was for him. Okay, that's just, if there's any golfers here, please forgive me. Okay? The path that links vision with goals and mission. So, we already kind of talked about that a little bit, right? The difference between mission and vision, all right? Goals are the things that move us from mission to vision, complete. Does that make sense? The goals are the steps that we implement that says, if I want to run a marathon, I have to start walking tomorrow morning. And I have to walk at least a half a mile, because I've never walked, and I'm way out of shape, and I'm way overweight. And if I want to run a marathon, step one is I'm going to get out the door and I'm going to walk a half a mile tomorrow. And then the day after that, I'm going to add 20 more steps, and then I'm going to add, right? But I have a goal that is actually measurable and tangible and real, and I can see in my meeting. My goal is from month to month, I'm going to add a quarter mile until I'm doing 5 miles. And then when I'm walking 5 miles, then I'm going to start jogging for a minute and walking for 2. and I'm going to jog for a minute and walk for 2. You know, I'm not giving you a course to how to get to a marathon. I'm kind of making this up, but you get the point, right? So that's the path that links vision with goals and mission. Any questions? Okay. Let he who is silent remain silent. I'm going to skip through because we're not going to talk about that. And we've already, well, I'm not going to say we're not going to. We've already somewhat covered this, and this is just highlights, high points, okay? All right, so what do? If we're moving forward, you have this in there. Clarify your God-led visions. Write down core value clarification exercise or something like that. Look it up on the internet. There's a billion of them. It would be a good thing for you to do this exercise. Do a core value exercise, and then you know what? In a year, you should do it again. Because you'll be surprised how, if you're in a mode of growing, moving towards vision, you'll be surprised how your values will begin to change. Right? And what will end up happening, just as a hint, is your values will move from here to there. Do you understand what I'm saying? Typically when people do their core values, they're very me-centered. Not always, but they have a tendency to, as you mature and as you grow in this, they start to want to push out a little bit more. So the things that you value start to have to do with people other than yourself. Okay? All right. Develop a God-led vision. Why do we say God-led? And what does that mean? Yeah, oh wow, that was so easy, wasn't it? It just means that we're taking these things to prayer, right? It's great to do a value clarification exercise, but if you're not praying before it, God, I need you to open my heart and mind that I might see myself with your eyes as I answer these questions, right? And then, like I shared, that I have these grandchildren, mentoring grandchildren. If I'm not taking what God's teaching me and I'm not imparting it to others, then what's the point? What we're doing here today, and next time we're here, and the last time, and every church that I come to, is a result of the fact that we had done this and this wasn't happening. We had done it with pastors, and don't get me wrong, I'm one of them, or was working in the field for many years. But typically the pastors kind of took it as their own magic skills that they learned that they could use on you, rather than bringing you all together and going, you know what? I've learned about listening skills, I need to teach you listening skills. I've learned about what values and vision can do in a life when you understand it and work towards it. I need to impart that to you. We're doing this because I think God imparted and placed on my heart that if we're not doing this in the local church, then what's the point? Okay? And I would say one of the reasons why I tell you to get a notebook so that you can hold on to this is that you're going to be able to sit down with your son or daughter or friend or grandchild or whatever, and if your spouse isn't here, and go, hey, you got to see this stuff. And believe me, if all you're doing is reading through it, what I've given you, you're giving them 1,000 times more than they may have ever heard. Does that make sense? Help to others. Finally, a good rhythm for review. So find a good rhythm. That just means that everyone has different points in their life where it's a good place to say, I need to look back. I need to debrief myself. How am I doing on this? Have I become a better listener because of what I learned? Or am I still interrupting people, and do I still, as soon as they start talking, I start figuring out what I'm going to say, which means I'm not listening to them really? Okay? A good rhythm for review. When do I sit down and kind of look at this or look at other things like this that I might be able to assess myself? Because if I'm not doing that, then guess what? You're just going to fall back to where you were. Because that's what we do as humans. unless someone is holding us accountable, we have a tendency to just backslide back. And the first place we should be held accountable is by, guess what? Me, by ourselves. I should be the first one that holds myself accountable. I may need to enlist others as a support group, as a support system, right? Summary, God-led values and vision help us move towards life the full, pleases the Lord with our lives, right?